and welcome. My name is Justine. I'm a homeschooling mother to 6 and wife homesteading in Ontario, Canada. Today I'd like to take you along with me as I bake for my large family. Baking doesn't just happen the day of for me. It's something that I need to prep for the night before. So this is the day before my big baking day. I'm prepping all my mixes, making sure I have all the sourdough ready. Tomorrow I'm going to be making some sourdough raisin bread, some sourdough pretzels, and some sourdough coffee cake. So far for my sourdough raisin bread, I've mixed together 1 cup of sourdough starter, 2 1/4 cups of water, 6 cups of white flour, 3 teaspoons of salt, and I've just mixed it all together with my hand until it formed kind of a shaggy dough. Afterwards, I added some raisins, and then for the next hour or so, I will lift the bread up and do some folds every 20 minutes until I feel like the bread has a good consistency. I'll go ahead and post this recipe in the description below so you guys have it on hand. Next up is sourdough pretzels. For this one, the night before, I've mixed together 3/4 cup of active sourdough starter, 1 cup of water, 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 4 cups of white flour. Now this recipe can be found on littlespoonfarm.com. Not exactly, because I do tweak all these recipes because I find my sourdough starter has a higher hydration than most, and so I always have to alter the recipes to make it work for myself. I threw everything into my Bosch mixer afterwards, and I got it started. Now, a lot of people have asked me about this Bosch mixer, if I like it, how it compares to the KitchenAid. I will say that I do enjoy the Bosch mixer if you are making a lot of bread and large batches of it. I don't like it as much if I'm going to use it to making some whipped cream or butter or small batches of cookies or pastries or anything like that. I did prefer my KitchenAid mixer. But if you're going to be making lots of bread, this thing is a beast. It will knead dough like you wouldn't believe it. The next thing I'm going to be putting together is the dough for my sourdough coffee cake. I found this recipe on farmhouseonboone.com, but I did alter it slightly because I was running out of certain ingredients. In this, I'm going to add 3/4 cup of bubbly active sourdough starter, 1/2 cup of water, 1 cup of melted coconut oil, although I would reduce that if I were to make it again. I'd probably add 1/2 to 3/4 cup of it. And then I added 3 cups of all-purpose flour. And now that the work is done, I'm going to leave all these 3 doughs just sitting on my counter fermenting overnight. The next day I woke up and I really wanted to get our couches cleaned up. So I have couch covers and cushion covers on most of our furniture because with little kids, you never know who's going to be rubbing their hands on it. And I prefer to have a method to get it all cleaned right away instead of fussing over the fact that the kids are getting my house dirty all the time. So I'm taking off the cover off our small love seat, and then I'll go ahead and take the cushions off our larger couch. We got this from my in-laws and we've had it forever, and it's just not worth getting it replaced right now, so we're just making do. I find these are the kinds of things that I can do for myself around the house that make it feel like it's less messy. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my house is in various stages of remodel right now. We moved in 2.5 years ago, and this was a fixer-upper and a half. We had no kitchen, no laundry room, so this is all stuff my husband has added. Even this pantry over here was non-existent until we put it in last year. The very first thing I wanted to tackle is the sourdough raisin bread. The reason being, it does need to have a second proof in the fridge, and I'd like to have that be, 2 to 3 hours long. And so I'm just getting it rolled out right now. Next up, I'll combine about 1/4 cup of butter and 1/2 cup of coconut sugar together. The easiest way to do it is honestly with my hands. I could use a mixer, but then I'd be dirtying something else, and this was the quickest and easiest way to do it. and my toddler joined me, which is nice. I was telling him not to touch the dough, and I think he was trying to pick the raisins out of the dough, so it's not going very well right now. And afterwards, I shaped it. I rolled it as tightly as I could, and then I tucked in the ends, trying to keep all the sugar and the cinnamon tucked away inside the actual roll. And the last tip I have for making raisin bread is to try and push all the little pieces of raisins into the dough so they're covered, because if they are exposed, they're gonna burn and they give the loaf kind of like a bitter taste. The second thing I got started on are my sourdough pretzels. Now for this, I rolled out the dough a little bit and then cut it into 16 equal pieces. I then rolled out the dough into a long snake-like formation, placed it into a U, twisted it twice, and then I pushed down the ends onto the roll. And I don't know if you can see kind of how I do that. I didn't get a great shot of it, but it's looking pretzel-like. Afterwards, my kids wanted to join in, which is great because a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old cooking is so helpful. My 9-year-old is actually helpful. She's gonna step in at some point and kind of calm the chaos down a little bit. But as you can see, the little boys are just grabbing everything and they're just wanting to be so helpful. It's a little bit funny, but also I was getting very stressed out during this process because I could feel all the dough just drying out, and I was hoping that my pretzels would turn out anyways, and they did. I added a damp cloth to the top just to regain some of the moisture, and I let them proof on the counter. For the sourdough cake, I have to make a cinnamon filling and a crumb topping. So the cinnamon filling has half a cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. And I mix that together. And then the crumb topping, which you'll see later on, has a half cup of butter, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, which I used coconut sugar actually in this, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Once I was done making the cinnamon filling and the crumb topping, I put together the rest of the cake. So to the mixture that I fermented the night before, I added 1 cup of sugar, half a cup of coconut sugar, 3 eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 cup of milk, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of baking soda. And I put it all in my Bosch mixer, and then I just let it get combined until it looked kind of like a thick pancake. That's just how it is with old houses. There are a lot of projects to be done, but we have to be realistic about our budget and the amount of time we have to get everything done. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the backsplash in my kitchen is non-existent. It's just one of those projects that got pushed to the back when we were renovating the kitchen, and it never got done. And that's just how it is with old houses. I wish we had time to get everything done that we want, but we have to be realistic about our budget and also the amount of time we have to spend doing those things. For now, I'm trying to be happy with the things the way they are. Contentment goes a long way. So now that the cake batter is ready, I'm going to go and oil a 9x13 pan with coconut oil. And then I'll put the mixture in, about half of it. Then I'll spread it around, and on top of that, I will put the cinnamon filling. Once I added the cinnamon filling, I put the crumb topping right on top of the cake, and it was ready to go into the oven. I put it in a 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes. The little boys were so cute. As I was making this cake, they kept asking me, "Whose birthday is it? Why are you making a cake?" It's not every day that we have cake in our house. We do have desserts, but it might be something like a pie or ice cream. Cake is usually reserved for birthdays, so I think that's why they were a little bit confused. I was trying to explain to them that it was a coffee cake, that it wasn't going to look like a birthday cake with icing. And once they heard the word coffee, they were very confused, and they said, "Why is Daddy going to be eating all this cake?" Because my husband's the only one who drinks coffee in the house. In the afternoons, I usually like to make myself a cup of tea. Today I chose a London fog latte. I do this by combining about a tablespoon of Earl Grey tea and a pinch of lavender into a cup, and then I steep it for 15 to 20 minutes. I added some raw milk to our milk frother, and then I let it warm up. Now you'll notice when this is done, it's not very frothy. We have 2 cows, one named Pistache and one named Honey May. Pistache's milk is lower in fat content, and so the milk froths better. But this time I was using Honey May's milk, which is higher in fat content, so it froths a little less. Afterwards, I added some maple syrup and some vanilla to my tea and mixed it around before topping it off with all that delicious creamy raw milk. After enjoying my cup of tea, I wanted to get started on the pretzels. I put some water in a big pot to boil. I then whisked up an egg in a little bowl. Once the water was boiling, I added 2 tablespoons of baking soda to the water and 1 tablespoon of sugar. I put the pretzels in one by one. I think I fit about 6 in there, and I left them on one side for 30 seconds. After the 30 seconds were up, I flipped them to the other side and then left them in for another 30 seconds. Using my slotted spoon, I picked them out and put them back onto the parchment paper. I tried to shake them off to get as much of the water off so it wouldn't drip all over the pan. Once I was done boiling the pretzels, I added an egg wash to all the tops, and then I sprinkled them with some salt. The pretzels then went into a 425-degree oven for about 15-16 minutes. I wanted to show you guys how I stay on top of all my fermenting and baking and cooking. I use a paper planner that I got on Amazon. I think it's called the Happy Planner, and I use the Teacher's Edition because it's set up so that I have vertical rows instead of horizontal rows, which actually keeps my brain a little bit more organized, and I like the layout better for seeing everything I need to do in a day. While waiting for my baking, I decided to tackle a project that's been bugging me for the last couple months. On top of my oven, we are planning to put a shelf. But since I haven't found the perfect shelf yet, I wanted something as a placeholder so I don't see a big white blank space on top of my oven every day. I took this old frame that I found in our garage. I think we had gotten this as a gift when we first got married, and I went on Etsy and printed out some prints that I found that looked kitchen related. And then I just added them to the frame, and I'm going to ask my husband to put this up on the wall so I can see how this looks. I finally remembered I needed to get my raisin bread in the oven, so I scored it lightly. I think I did it too deep this time because it did end up splitting where I didn't want it. And then I threw it into the oven at 450 degrees for 40 minutes. If I were to redo this recipe, I think I would put it in the oven for a little less time, maybe 35 to 38 minutes. It did brown quite a bit more than I intended it to, and it didn't taste burnt, but it was just a little bit too dark in color for me. Since all my baking was done, I wanted to tackle a few tasks outside. One of them being fixing a window on the chicken coop. Because of all the snow and ice we've been having, our chicken coop run actually collapsed, thankfully on none of the chickens. But now they can't go outside anymore. And when the chicken coop run dropped, it actually took with it the chicken wire on one of the windows. So now the chickens are kind of stuck with no windows. I first had to remove the chicken wire, which had become tangled onto the wall and some grapevines. It was kind of a pain. After I did that, I tried to place my stapler somewhere, and it ended up slipping into the broken down chicken run, and then I had to figure out how to get it out, which involved me climbing into the chicken run and getting tangled up in chicken wire and some random pieces of wood, so that was a lot of fun. But I did eventually manage to get the chicken wire onto the window and protect the chickens, so now they can have the window open again. I know it seems counterintuitive to have the windows open in the winter, but it's actually good for the chickens to have some air coming into their coop. It just makes them healthier, and just like we like fresh air, they also like the fresh air. Because I was already outside, I decided I'd probably need to bring some hay for my little calf that's waiting for me in the barn. He's still in isolation for the next 2 weeks, so he's just hanging out by himself, and he's pretty needy. He'll call out during the day, and I usually go see him a couple times just to give him some pets and talk to him and just be a friend. I guess the chickens next door aren't petting it for friendship. For dessert, I've cut into the coffee cake, and it was delicious. We all enjoyed it very much. The next day after church, I begged my husband to put the project I was working on the day before up, and so he obliged pretty quickly. It's not hard to convince my husband to get work done in the house. I think it turned out not bad. It's not the shelf I wanted, but it's better than nothing. We had the raisin bread for breakfast a few days after. It was delicious, and the kids enjoyed having the raisins spread throughout the bread instead of just concentrated in a swirl. We had the pretzels for lunch the following day. I served it with some honey mustard, which is just some mustard, a little bit of honey, and some parsley mixed up together. It was a big hit with the kids. They all loved the pretzels. We'll definitely be doing this one again. The couch covers actually proved to be a little bit more difficult to clean than I thought they would be. So I had to wash them multiple times and finally add a little bit of bleach to get it as clean as I wanted it. And so this is me a few days later, finally putting on the couch cover again. And I don't know if this is a feat for anyone else, but for me, it is always an exhausting task, especially when you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old hopping on the couch as you're trying to put the cover on. Winter days are really the days where we get to slow down and make our homes more beautiful and do some baking and do all the things that make our house feel like homes. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. If you did, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you all next time.